Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Alain. It's Saturday. We're going to talk about some books. Going to be talking about Surviving Armed Assaults and Rogue Warrior Blood Lies. Those are the two books on the table this morning. Going to be discussing. Hope your weekend is starting out well. You know, I'm drinking out of a Les Miserables cup this morning. One of my favorite classic books by Victor Hugo. I love the book. I love the movies. I love the theater plays. Been able to go to the theater 4 different times. The first time was in Seoul, Korea, with a Pacific Rim tour. Phenomenal show. He sang and I went to it then. That was way back in the 90s before we were married. The most recent time was a year ago when my wife and I went and saw it in Spokane, Washington. And I've been able to see it a couple times with my daughter in Canada and in Spokane. We named our daughter Cosette after one of my Les Mis mugs. So, fantastic book. If you've never read Les Mis, I encourage you to do so. It's good to read some of those old classics. And it's a huge book. And just think, Victor Hugo wrote that without all of the modern computers and everything that we have today. So fantastic read. Hello, Vito. No problem being late. I had a different time yesterday, but appreciate you showing up and saying hello. Hope you're doing well. So this week, we're going to talk about a couple books. Let's just talk about Rogue Warrior first. Just another of the series, Blood Lies, that I've been reading and then donating, getting rid of as I pare down my library. I sort of noticed these ones with Jim DeFelice don't seem to have as much cussing in them as the earlier ones did when he was writing with a different author. So they still got cussing and killing, but it seems like it was toned down. The cussing is toned down a little bit in these, even though the killing's still up there. So it's a fun read. They're all fairly similar. I mean, if you like one, you're going to sort of like them. They're formulaic and just fun, quick reads, military stuff. The one thing I didn't like in this one that they didn't catch is when they were talking about the bullets for the shotgun. And shotgun shells. We don't put bullets in the shotgun. And so when I read that in here, I was like, oh, somebody screwed up. And they didn't catch that. Otherwise, it's a good book. And so they're just fun little reads. And now it's off the shelves and get rid of it so someone else can enjoy it. Now, remember, last week, I talked about Punching Up, great book for writers by Lawrence Kane and Chris Wilder. And I mentioned that the two of those had written tons of books between the two and some individually. And that's why I wanted to talk about Lawrence's book, Surviving Armed Assaults, this week. This is one that Lawrence wrote by himself. Great book on self-defense. It's Surviving Armed Assaults, a martial artist's guide to weapons, street violence, and countervailing force. Exceptional book. I can't say enough about this. I forget if this is one that I actually endorsed or not, because I've endorsed a number of his, but this is just a great book. And this is a autographed copy. So want to give you a little bit of stuff that's in here. Chapter 1 is on awareness. Important. All of us that teach self-defense talk about awareness. It is such an important concept, and he does do a great job in different things. Then he has a chapter 2 on avoidance, avoiding risky behavior and how violence escalates and so forth. There's a chapter 3 is all about scenarios, different carjackings, cash machine safety, hostage situations, domestic violence, planes, trains, public transportation, sexual assault, rape, molestation, workplace violence. So, it goes a little bit deeper into some of the specifics that you see in those kind of scenarios. Chapter 4 is on de-escalation strategies, talking, listening, and so forth. some good advice there as far as we can de-escalate things so it doesn't get violent. Chapter 5, Countervailing Force, has legal considerations, the AOJP principle, combat mindset, triggers, bystanders, important. Like Peyton Quinn used to say, create witnesses that'll vouch for you. Chapter 6, Armed Conflict, level of force, principles of defense, angles of attack, stances, footwork, range, empty hand to weapon versus weapon to weapon. Chapter 7, 9 rules to live by. Rule 1, don't get hit. Pain is your friend. Weapons are ubiquitous. Always assume they are armed. Bad guys cheat to win, so should you. Understand how weapons work. Expect the unexpected. Yell for help. Check for bleeding. So some good things to think about whenever you're dealing with violence. Chapter 8, talking about the aftermath of violence. Medical triage, creating witnesses, legal process, dealing with the press. Chapter 9, weapon features and functions, hand weapons, knives, swords, mass weapons, pole arms, multi-element weapons, projectile weapons, unusual weapons. And the conclusion chapter, rule number 1, again, don't get hit. Pain is your friend. Weapons, assume they are armed. Bad guys cheat. So going back over some of that, the rules to reinforce those. But there's just a lot of really good stuff in this book. If you want to know more about self-defense and weapons and violence, can't recommend this enough. When I had Dan Anderson on the show, Dan Anderson said Kane and Wilder are two that he recommends wholeheartedly, and not a lot of authors that he does. I do too. So now, another reason I'm sharing this book this Saturday. Coming Friday, November 1st, 1 hour later. So it's going to be at 9 o'clock Mountain Time, not 8 o'clock. I'm moving it up an hour so Lawrence can join me. It's going to be 8 o'clock for him in Seattle, Washington, and he's going to join me on Coffee with Alain. We may talk about this book. We may talk about this book. We may talk about one of the other 20-some books that he's authored. Might talk about them all, or a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But Lawrence will be on 9 o'clock Mountain Time live Friday, November 1st. And that's why I wanted to talk about his book today, because he's coming up next Friday. And it should be a great time, great interview. He's a great guy. Whenever I go to Seattle and have some extra time, I like getting with him, and we'll go out to eat. I've been to his house there and met his family in Seattle. Just a really solid, great guy. And he and Chris have put out some excellent books throughout the years. Chris is a great guy too. I really like both of them. Endorse their works 100%. So it's going to be fun to have Lawrence on the show. Want to say good morning to Dixon. Dixon's here. Dixon says, I'll have to add that one to my collection. It's a good book. So my favorite book of theirs is The Little Black Book of Violence. And for a personal reason, because right on the cover of Little Black Book of Violence, there's a quote right across the top, big on the cover. This book will save lives. Alain Breeze. That was one of the books of theirs that I wholeheartedly endorsed, and got a quote actually on the front cover. Good morning, Eric. I appreciate you being here. Hope you're having a great Saturday. So anyway, those are the two books today that I wanted to discuss. Rogue Warrior, just a fun, quick read if you like that series and military action stuff, cussing and killing. Surviving Armed Assaults, one of Lawrence's individual books that he didn't write with Chris, but just a great book on self-defense. And I wanted to bring it up because Lawrence will be with us next Friday. Be here live, 9 o'clock Mountain. You can ask Lawrence questions, and he'll be able to answer them live, or listen to the replays, listen to the podcast. But that'll be a great interview. Check out the book Les Mis, or another classic. Read a classic once in a while. They're good for education and gives you a different perspective on things when you look back and read some of those classics. Read the newsletter that you can get at enjoylifesafely.com. Go there right now after the show. If you haven't, sign up. You sign up by downloading one of the free ebooks to help you stay safe. Then you'll get the newsletter on the weekends with information on staying safe, defending yourself, enjoying life, and being exceptional, because that's what we're about at Coffee with Alain and Enjoy Life Safely. Make it a super spectacular Saturday, and I'll see you tomorrow.